Good morning, Jamie. Good morning,
Hey,
everyone.
morning, Shadab. Morning, everybody out there in listening land.
This week we're going to talk about there's a viral, I would say, quote going on about how the new CEO at Open Door is talking about how the AI is going to be default in their the job, etc., and every role. So we'll start with that, and then we'll talk about some perplexities, Comet browser, and a couple of other the launches from OpenAI like Sora 2 and like parental controls, etc.
Yep. Yeah, and a couple of other things we'll hit upon Anthropic's release of Claude Sonnet 4.5 and a couple of things just also released and announced by Microsoft. So we'll hit all those and more in this episode of the AI Files.
Okay, stay tuned for a quick introduction. Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jaime Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
So this week, Jimmy, let's start with this quote of the week, which is basically from new CEO of Open Door, and this guy is actually his name is Katz, and he comes from Shopify, and then he talks about the default being the AI. So, for example, and Henry starts this memo. This memo is going viral. It talks about this is day 11 for me at Open Door, and thank you everyone. And then he goes on, and then he's here is a few like the most relevant paragraph that I'm going to read out. So he said, "Quote: In the last week, the hardest thing we have had to do as a company is to figure out how we are going to get back to the office. That work is now mostly behind us. There will be no change management here." Pretty harsh there. We are back at the office, and that's mostly the last time we're going to talk about it. And then he goes on, and then he says that our job at Open Door is to build the best platform possible to make selling, buying, and owning a home as delightful as possible. So we need to move faster, and we cannot do that without being AI obsessed. So starting today, first line in everyone's job expectation is simply this: default AI. This applies to everyone, including me. Starting with the next performance review, in addition to asking how much impact each employee delivered, we will also ask ourselves how frequently does each person default AI. If you reach Google Doc or Sheets before you reach for an AI tool, you are not defaulting AI. If a prototype project is not built in Cursor, Claude, Code, you're not defaulting AI. If you have not used chat.open.com or started thinking about how you can build your own agent and save your prompts, you're not defaulting AI. So AI use is a skill like anything else. The more you use it, the better you can get at it. We expect every one of us to become expert at this. We will help with resources and training. However, ultimately, you must master this skill. We have a lot of work ahead of us. We will not get there without everyone defaulting AI, uncoding. So, this was the viral memo, Jamie, like about AI being the default. In other words, we also talk about this as AI first approach, but here he's also talking about AI as a default. So you got to start with
Yep.
AI and then figure out other ways to do it.
So I agree with 99% of what is in that memo or the things that he talked about, except for one. Uh, Obviously, they're a Google shop, because you mentioned things like Google Doc and Sheets, but that's the one part that I do disagree with because even Google just recently announced that they're integrating, Gemini into their productivity suite of tools. So to me, if you're opening up things like Google Doc and using Gemini, you are using AI, and I think that's going to be even more prevalent as we see advances with the integration of these, whether it's Copilot or Gemini, and just the infusion of those things. It could be the place that you start, but overall, I do agree with it. It's companies are expecting their employees to use AI because if you're not, you're going to be slower than your competition. And if you're not comfortable with using these tools, you either need to think about how you get trained to be comfortable, or you step out of the way, and that means you're not going to be employed. So overall,
Yeah.
I agree with it. What's been the chatter? What's been the internet response to this? I can imagine in my head what the typical um, you know uh, commentary may be on such a, I don't want to say a harsh stance, but a strong stance from a a company leader.
And you're absolutely right, Jamie. That's what happened essentially. Lots of people agree and admire this stance. The other says that, oh, well, this is pretty harsh, and particularly that work from home, basically ending and going back to the office without any
You,
kind of a dialogue,
you know,
etc. I think people were more like criticizing on that aspect, but I think overall it was received well, I would say. But still, there are always going to be some opponents.
yeah, you notice how I glossed over the work from home part, or lack thereof of working from home. Yeah, is keeping my AI lens on it. I have a totally different commentary on the where to work part, but different topic for a different show, not us.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
I
like
could give you my
it's some.
opinion if you haven't figured it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree, Jamie. And here's the thing, right? I mean, this is I would say, a little bit paradoxical in the sense that, okay, on one hand, you're trying to modernize. You say that, okay, AI is the default, right? AI is not a traditional; it is a new way of working, right? So you're modernizing. On the other hand, you want to default to the traditional way of working. Oh, you got to be in the office. Why? I mean, how's that? How the work from home is not a modern way of working? Why do you have to default to traditional world in one sense, while on the other hand you say no, you have to actually pivot to the most modern way of working and default to the AI? It's paradoxical in my view, right? The approaches are paradoxical, and a lot of companies who have basically said
Yeah,
that, oh, essentially working in the office actually inspire more creativity. Well, I'll tell you what, some of the best growth of the companies have come during the time when people were working from home. So I think it's much more, and that's where there is a risk of a lot of time the corporates coming out as ingenuous, like in terms of the um like people not really accepting it that easily, that kind of stand. So, but by the way, other thing is, Jamie, I also wanted to like quickly relate to our own experience, right? Our own ways of working that I've seen in the corporates, etc. Is that, sometimes now that we've used that a lot, right? We use the Copilot a lot to actually research for the information or prepare. And I can't tell you, like, there are so many examples. I'll tell you, like, for this week, you and I were actually part of an event, right? The Frontier Finance event. Where we invited lots of customers to talk about how the finance transformation is happening with AI. And as part of that, like, we were doing a lot of organizational work, administrative work as well. And there were some piece where I had to actually assemble some data gathering, like the data set, etc. And it was difficult, okay, because the format was cumbersome. And all I did is I just provided whatever the raw data I had to the Copilot and asked it to organize, sort it, analyze it, and it was really done very wonderfully. And I'll tell you that it's the same thing that Copilot returned to me in just less than a minute. It would have taken me about an hour to do that. Okay, so it's a great example because it just like it was just cumbersome, okay, dealing with the format and all those kind of thing. It's a clear example of how the AI is resulting in the benefit. On the other hand, what I've also seen is still many times people will ask you a question which you will say, okay, this could have been a simple Copilot query, to be honest, right? And that's what it is. It's like this, right? We have seen those things where people say, well, this could have been an email. It is like that. So sometimes it is when people are asking you something, you would wonder, okay, this could have been a Copilot query. That's what is my experience, I would say.
mm, yeah, yeah. That's definitely true. It's this combination of again, how do we think about a modern work experience? And again, does that have to be in the office 5 days a week? My opinion is definitely not. And then you blend that with the latest and greatest of technologies, whether it's Copilot or any other AI infused piece, and how are we then advancing the experience of an employee or a group of employees to be more productive. And again, I go back to, I don't think it needs to be in an office setting to be productive, but you still need people to be connected and being able to collaborate. And there's plenty of tools to do that, but more importantly, it's how are they leveraging AI across that spectrum, which is I'll call it the differentiator between potentially company A to company B, and those companies that don't take advantage of that will definitely be, in a detriment and not being able to catch up or stay pace with those other companies that do that. Anyway,
True.
I'll get off my soapbox, but that's what we're here for, to talk about these things.
Absolutely, share our perspective. All right, moving on to in the other news, Jamie. This week, California Governor Newsom has signed the landmark AI safety bill SB 53. This bill was actually passed about 2 weeks ago in the state legislature, and it requires the large AI labs, call them all OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, Google DeepMind, essentially all the frontier AI firms, with whoever has like more than $500 million in the revenue, to be very transparent about the safety protocols. It also ensures whistleblower protections for employees at these companies. It also creates a mechanism for AI companies and the public to report potential critical safety incidents to California's Office of Emergency Services. And then companies have to report incidents related to crimes committed without human oversight, such as cyber attacks and deceptive behavior by a model that is not required under the EU AI Act. So, if you remember, Jamie, the SB 53 essentially is a second attempt from the state senator Scott Wiener's, on this AI safety bill, because last year the Governor Newsom had vetoed that more sweeping and wider ramification bill, which was SB 1047. So Scott Weiner actually worked with different companies, took some feedback, and basically made it more amenable for the governor to actually sign it. So it's like and by the way, Anthropic actually endorsed this bill, while OpenAI and Meta still oppose this one. So like this is, I would say, landmark AI safety bill. It puts a lot of onus on those firms, and this has been a contention even with the federal government as well. So we'll see, but this kind of sets a precedent.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that there's companies on either side, foundational AI companies that are on opposite sides of supporting this, which tells me that there's still things inside the actual bill that probably are not at least seen to be allowing these companies to innovate. So Anthropic is on board, which is great, but until I see all of these companies getting behind the bill, that is a red flag. So there's probably going to be some changes or modifications in the bill. It passed, as you said, the state legislator, but I'm assuming it has to go through the Senate as well, which I guess will be coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's get into some rapid fire news. So this first one may actually require a separate section, maybe in our next episode. But Microsoft just announced or launched a new SKU for what I'm going to call, home users or non-corporate users. This is Microsoft 365 Premium, and what it really does is it brings together the Office applications and Copilot, as well as then some of the things that were available as agents within a business setting, most notably within the M365 Copilot. So it brings those, again, tried and true familiar apps like Word and Excel, but then also brings the Copilot, things like Microsoft Researcher and Analyst Agents. And it does it now at a lower price point, $20. It's actually 1 cent less than ChatGPT. So I'm assuming that was done on purpose, but it's $19.99 per month, and it brings in all of these greater capabilities, but then it also brings in higher throughput for use of the GPT models. In this case, things like the 4.0 image and higher summits. And as you already, you get access to things like deep research, the ability for doing vision. Again, assuming that you're doing some of the stuff on the phone, as well as it brings in Defender and a. I feel like I'm, hey, there's more, right? You get another 1 terabyte worth of cloud storage as well. The reason why I said this is probably one that we'll tackle maybe in the next episode. There's new agents. There's something called the Office Agent, which basically allows you to build things, aka things like PowerPoint, as an example. And then there's additional agents that have been included inside of Word and inside of Excel. So that to me is the more interesting thing out of this announcement and a release, other than just the fact that everything is coming under one umbrella for those that want to use Copilot and Office apps and these advanced agents.
I think it's a good bundle, I would say. Good value bundle, essentially. Anyway, in another rapid news,
Yeah,
Comet, uh, Perplexity's Comet browser is now generally available to all. Funny thing, Jamie, just a few days back, I got an invite to actually join the Comet browser, and then after a few days, before I could even act on it, it was already generally available to us. So I think it's been such a rapid pace world, actually. But essentially, Comet, I think it's a great success because it was launched on July 9th with a waitlist of 460,000 users, and the waitlist actually had quickly grown to millions. So I think that's pretty good reception they got with this browser, and I think that's why they rushed into making it generally available without losing ground, which means that other browsers are coming up very soon. They didn't want to lose that momentum.
yeah, similar experience. By the way, I got that same email, and I didn't get a chance to try out yet, but I have like looked at other podcasts that have done some demos and talked about the Perplexity Comet browser in depth. Really, not necessarily just it is. You got to think about what it is. It's an agentic browser based upon Chromium, and it does that agentic workflow pretty well, at least from the demos that I've seen. Now, I always say, I trust some things, but I trust myself more, which means I want to get my hands on it and use it. I think this will be um, another segment for an episode where we go a little bit deeper on Comet and actually go through its paces. I'm assuming our audience, those folks listening now, would probably agree and see how this kind of compares to the agentic workflows that are part of OpenAI and Microsoft, because those things are out there. So that's computer use, but this is something slightly different, and we'll definitely want to go through that. At least in my mind, at the very least, I'll be doing it, but probably would make sense to do that for the wider audience.
True. Just today morning, I was watching a video from Arvind Srinivas, who is the CEO of Perplexity. And the journalist asked, okay, about the browser. He has started saying that, oh, it's not a browser, it's a personal assistant, right? So there is already some pivot in the branding and marketing already happening. Like he wants to play, of course, much bigger role than just a browser, and positioning it as a personal assistant for everything, which means it integrates with not just do the conventional browser function, but also integrates with emails. Essentially, is your assistant that you want to keep. That's it. That's what the new positioning is.
Yep. Yeah, and it makes sense as it relates to how that they're targeting what its role is in terms of Comet. All right, so hard segue here. We've always been talking about how AI is going to be changing the workforce, changing the landscape, and as we said, AI may be a catalyst for changing what the workforce looks like. So this falls into that category. So there was an article this past week from CNBC that Lufthansa, again, airline company out of Germany, had disclosed that the airline will be cutting 4,000 full-time employees, or at least the 4,000 FTE roles by the year 2030. So roughly 5 years from now, or a little less than that. So these will mostly be cuts in the German administration functions, and it leans towards the use of AI to drive efficiency. So the same way that we kind of opened up with open door kind of concept here, but it's about, they're going to take an internal look at the processes that they currently do today with people and how can they be more efficient, quote unquote, more lean with the same, if not additional tasks, but doing it with less people and having that be done by AI. So yet again, another example of how companies are really changing in the way that they look at their employee base, the things that they're looking to do, and how AI can become part of that employee ecosystem. I'm sure this will not be the last. I'm sure there will be many more, and we're already seeing a lot of this, certainly in the tech industry. But now we're starting to see it kind of branch out into other industries and other, sectors of various different companies that are having an impact on, again, full-time job roles. So, as we always say, or at least as I always say, learn AI because it's going to be important as a tool and as a portion of your resume to either get a job or keep your job.
True. And as you said, Jamie, these news are going to just continue to increase. The reason being because all these companies, until they make these kind of announcements, the investors and shareholders do not believe that they're really making good use of it. So I think there's a lot of peer pressure. There's a lot of Wall Street pressure for companies to actually prove with some hard metrics about how they are actually using AI. So I don't see this anyway get slower. It essentially is going to just continue to, like, every company will want to show something like this into the market. Anyway, moving on, let's talk about some of the launches, Jimmy. So this week, Mira Murati's Thinking Machines has launched their first product, which is basically a fine-tuning service called Thinker. This is a flexible API for fine-tuning language models. It empowers researchers and developers and hackers to experiment with models by giving them control over the algorithm and data while handling the complexity of distributed training. So, it fine-tunes a range of large and small open weight models. Currently, it's mostly the Coin models, series of model, as well as the Llama models. And it's basically managed service that runs on their internal clusters and training infrastructure. And it frees the users from managing that infrastructure so that they can focus solely on the data and the algorithm. And that basically, if they've also what they've done is they've also released an open source library called the Thinker Cookbook with modern implementations of the post-training methods that run on top of the Thinker API. So remember, this is post-training, not a pre-training, and this is currently working on the open source open weight models, and you can basically customize them, fine-tune them. And this is where basically Thinking Machines see the opportunity that most of the corporates will be betting on fine tuning them. Right now, it's already in the private beta for researchers and developers. There are groups at Princeton, Stanford, Berkeley, etc., who are already using this. And the Thinker is actually free to start for now. They will introduce a usage-based pricing in the coming weeks. So this is where we have heard from Mira Murati's team already with their first product. By the way, no word from Ilya's company yet on the safe superintelligence, because of course they have a grander vision and they're trying to do some bigger things. Hopefully we'll hear from them also soon.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's always been difficult is fine tuning models. It's getting a little bit easier. I mean, I know Microsoft itself put out a customizing a model really associated with Copilot, and that's good, but it's still a small subset of the things that you can do with fine tuning. So the bottom line, fine tuning has always been difficult and costly, by the way. So if this really pans out in terms of an API that really allows experimentation, but doing it in a a manner that is easier through an API and allows you to use, as an example here, the weights and models as it relates to a mixture of expert-based model and being able to tune that. I think that's a great thing. We'll see how this goes, and the reception of it, as well as the use. As you mentioned, I know it's only in private preview right now, or private beta, whatever they're calling it. So the amount of people who actually have access to it are relatively small. And again, I don't go to Princeton or Berkeley, so those are the ones that actually have been using it to tinker with thinking. But we'll see how it kind of pans out. I think it's good if it lives up to its billing, because that will just um, greater enhance the use of these different models to be aligned with a corporate need. Again, that's really why you do fine tuning, so it aligns with either your business practices and/or the data that you're trying to then reason over. So time will tell. Got some good confidence in Mira's ability to build. So we'll see how this actually works with Tinker. And by the way, it's a great name because you're tinkering with the model. So
Yeah.
gotta love a little bit of marketing humor. All right. So speaking about tinkering, so Microsoft released a new framework. It's called the Azure Agent Framework. So if you haven't been living underneath a rock, agents are basically the key focus as we stand now. If you look back historically, when 4 or 5 years ago, everything was about a single chat experience. We've definitely evolved beyond chatbots into these autonomous components that reason, call tools, collaborate, and adapt based upon their needs. Those are agents, right? So there's been existing frameworks from Microsoft. To be honest with you, they've been conflicting frameworks, things like semantic kernel, autogen, like where do I use one versus the other, which ones are supported in production if I'm building something that is going to be running my company. So that's been what I'll say is a little bit of, I don't want to call it a stumbling block, but a detractor from some companies going full bore into using some of these existing agent frameworks. So Microsoft, in Microsoft's brilliance, if you want to call it that, is let's create a new framework. So gotta love the marketing names around this. It's called the Microsoft Agent Framework. Makes sense, right? So the intent here is that that's going to unify and bring stability into the tools used to build production ready multi-agent systems, or at least that's the intent. So, what is the agent framework? First off, it's open source, and it's a software development kit and a runtime for building, deploying, and managing multi-agent systems. So it does combine the enterprise capabilities in terms of connectors around semantic kernel, as well as the more advanced orchestration patterns within AutoGen. So the key thing here is that agent framework will support the building of the orchestration. So the creative and the LLM driven portions of building agents, while also bringing in the workflow. So these deterministic business logic elements that need to connect, or at least need to determine what the connection should be between agents. So there are 4 different pillars within this framework. Number 1 is open standards. Again, if you've been listening to this to these podcasts and/or looking at any other set information, open standards are super important. Things like being able to support the model context protocol, being able to support Google's agent to agent protocol, as well as them being able to call different endpoints through the open API support. That is all within the agent framework from Microsoft. So this allows for different tools to be used, as well as for agents to communicate across different environments. And notice how I said environments. That means that the Microsoft Agent Framework, yeah, sure, it could work with different agents built within the Microsoft ecosystem, but it could also work with agents that might be created under, a Google environment or AWS environment or Agentforce, as an example. So it doesn't matter where these agents are built. It's about, can they communicate? So that's pillar number one. Second thing is, it's a pipeline for various different research. So Microsoft Research drives a lot of innovations, and they do things like the autogen that was actually from research. So elements like group chat, doing Agentic orchestration, as well as just the ability for what's called debate, or how these agents can determine what is the better agent to use in an actual workflow. Those are all things that are being helped and driven by Microsoft Research. Extensibility is another key pillar. Again, this whole framework is about modular design, all based upon YAML and JSON to define the agents, but also the ability to have pluggable memory to connect into these agents, as well as then just broad connector support. Again, go back to what I was mentioning around MCP, that can be automatically enabled inside of agents that are built under the framework. And obviously, the last pillar here is all around enterprise readiness. So while it's important to be able to build an agent and to make it talk to tools and maybe talk to other agents, what's also important is, what are these things actually doing, right? If you're basing your business, you want to be able to know, all right, how is this thing performing? So the observability, what's the telemetry? What can it collect on the use of these agents that are running within the agent framework? And then, how can I actually build and deploy these? So whole CI/CD integration is super important. Oh, and all the time, I should be worried about security as well. So the ability to have identification of agents as a living, breathing thing, if you want to call it that, through security and tagging, and the ability to also support long running and durable agents, because again, a agent may not just be a single instance of something, but may span, hours, if not days. And then how do I ensure that that thing is up and running? So anyway, that's the Microsoft Agent Framework in a nutshell. It was, again, just announced and released this past week. So we'll see how the adoption takes off. And again, I know I've said this a couple times already on this episode, but this might be one where we open up code and start showing, maybe at a future episode, or maybe just one that's just devoted for a product, rundown.
Yet another framework, Jamie, but I think this was required because we had heard a similar feedback that some of the features are not yet enterprise ready. So I think this is a good positive step forward, I would say, on the framework. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The another launch news was OpenAI launches Sora 2, a leap forward in video and audio generation. Basically, this new release, the new version of the Sora, and in this one, you actually have a dedicated app that you download from the App Store, and then basically you can use that app. And that app has several features, like you can watch videos, you can follow people and watch their creation, you can watch different shots that people have created, you can remix that right there, right? So you can remix that with, let's say, just a tinkering of the prompt, and then have your own version of that video also ready. So that's actually a lot of fun, watching that. And then you can of course create your own videos by providing prompt, but that's invite only feature right now. So not everybody has the access, including you and I yet, but once you get invite, you will be able to create the videos using the prompt. And the beauty of the Sora 2 is basically the realistic physics. There are several videos that have been shown by OpenAI where it shows physics in action. For example, a gymnast or a ballerina, etc., and different action sequences which adhere to the physics laws. there is an object permanence, right? The fidelity to the objects in the shot. It doesn't just fade away. Essentially, you can retain those objects. And then there are controllable multi-shot sequences. So it's much better. And to be honest, a lot of videos are very hard to, like, you can't even figure out that they are AI generated. That is a pretty good quality. So for that purpose, Jamie, let's have a look at a couple of them here, and that would actually give a good sense of the audience to understand that how good they are. Okay, have a look.
Whoa, steady. Damn it.
花火綺麗だね。でも僕たちは少しずつ離れていく。
Ready when you are. 3, 2, 1, go. Dude, you all right? I'm good. Whoa, steady. Damn it.
花火綺麗だね。でも僕たちは少しずつ離れていく。
So you saw those videos, Jamie. They're like really good.
Amazing. Yeah. The ability for Sora 2 to make something realistic. One of the videos that we just watched obviously was around, the gymnast, or, the kid doing the backflips. That is, it seems so simple, but when you think about the complexity of getting the human body to move like that and making it look lifelike, that's the key and critical piece. And the other thing too is that you hear sound connected with that, which is something the first Sora did not do. I'll talk a little bit about some history and the things around it in a minute, but from what we just saw, the complexities of understanding our physical world and the difficulties on moving things, and again, that goes back to the realistic physics part of it. Sora 2 definitely nailed that, and I worry a little bit about people trying to discern between what's real or what's not. So that to the average user, they're not going to know, especially as Sora 2 starts to get widely adopted or used by people, or at least get access to it to start generating things. But yeah, from those quick examples that we just saw, night and day. And I would go on a limb right now and say that Sora 2 is probably the leader for now. Who knows what Google's going to come out with their next iteration of VO, but the capabilities of Sora are at the top right now with Sora 2.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this is a really good leap forward and a good catch up for OpenAI with the VO3 and many other launches that has come out recently. By the way, there is a very famous feature in this one, which basically upload yourself cameos. You put your own likeness and then voice into any scene. So that I think is fun. Again, you need to be invited to actually be able to do some of those things. But it's gonna be much more fun, inserting yourself in those videos. I'm really gonna have fun with that. By the way,
Yeah, just a couple of notes on that one.
Yeah.
Just a couple of notes on that. There is protection with those cameos, so you have to upload yourself, and then no one else could actually use that, which is important because unless you give them permission to do it, someone can't create a video of you with your existing likeness using that cameo if you didn't give them rights to do it. And if you've been looking at any of the things being posted, you saw that there's a couple of cameos out there that were being used. Obviously, the OpenAI's leader cameoed himself, and people are able to use it because he provided access to it. So there's some funny videos, putting him in all different situations and stuff like that. But it's super important. The reason why I mentioned that again is it's locked down based on security. So that is a big thing with ensuring that something doesn't get used in the wrong intent or purposes.
That is true, Jamie. A very good point, actually, because there are some good features, I would say, they have included, which are essentially the parental control and teen protections, etc., kind of thing. For example, there is a strong emphasis on consent and likeness control and teen protections. There is no, it tries to not make you fully addicted to it, right? So there is no infinite scroll optimization. They are trying to, essentially focus on creativity, not addiction. And the monetization model basically is a little bit different. They're talking about that, okay, there will be an optional paid boost for extra video generation, for example. So they're trying to, I would say, or at least they're claiming that they're trying to reinvent the whole social media addictive and the commercial trap, and come up with different kind of models. So Sam Altman has already said that the company is also planning two changes to Sora. First, by giving copyright holders more granular control over generation of characters, and this is a new model that they're trying, where basically the copyright holders can decide if their copyrights can be used it or not, right? So it's an opt-out model. And I think some companies have already done that. For example, if you want to create, let's say, Batman, if Warner Brother has already opted out, you will not be able to do that. In other words, you can also actually provide more fine control in that, right? Maybe they will allow some watermarking, right? So basically, copyright holders, I think this is a welcome change, and a lots of copyright holders are welcoming this kind of model to experiment with. The other thing is that there is an opt-in model for the user themselves, where basically, you're putting your cameo in. So it's a both opt-in and opt-out model available. And this also, I just wanted to mention that in a very relevant news, Jamie, Character AI had to remove the Disney characters after receiving cease and desist letter from Disney because of, so I think this is a trend where copyright holders are fighting back. So I think this is a good model of allowing them to opt out. Question is that should it be opt out or should it be opt in? I don't know. I think this is still a battle they're trying to figure out. But right now it looks like that this is opt out has to do. By the way, it's available in US and
Yeah,
Canada, and they will expand globally as well later.
yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I'm not opt out, by the way. I'm definitely not a lawyer, so I'll put that out there. And definitely not an intellectual property lawyer, but it seems like OpenAI is rewriting some of IP copyright laws because they're explicitly telling companies that you have to opt out of us using that likeness of something versus assuming it's opt in. So very different approach. We'll see how this pans out in the courts because I will guarantee you there probably will be some type of legal lawsuit somewhere along the lines with this opt out approach that OpenAI is taking. But we'll see
Yep.
where it goes. So can I switch gears, or do you got anything else on Sora 2? By the way, I'm itching to get my hands on it.
Let's go with the next one.
I was playing around with Sora. I was playing around with Sora 1 this past weekend. So I was telling myself, man, I really wish I had access to Sora 2. So I will definitely be waiting for that one. Anyway, we'll switch over to a different launch topic. This one is not about video generation, but it's actually with Anthropic. So Anthropic released the Claude Sonnet 4.5. It's definitely another leap forward for building complex AI agents or letting Sonnet actually create code. So this is definitely aimed at being the de facto, if you will, as of today, the model to do coding and building agents. So if you look at the scores in this, at least this version of Claude, of Sonnet, definitely it made some leaps and bounds in terms of reasoning and math. One of the key things is the ability to build agents, and you probably heard this already, but they let Claude Sonnet 4.5 rip for basically 30 hours, left it alone to actually do a coding assignment. That is a vast jump from previous attempts, which were measured in certainly smaller number of hours. So that's first and foremost definitely one of the biggest advantages with the Sonnet 4.5. There are a couple of other things that they brought in. So Claude Code, fresh new terminal interface, extensions for VS Code or Visual Studio Code, that is, and other checkpoints that allow you to build and run large tasks, and the ability to rewind that to prior code states as needed. So again, just focusing in on the ability to generate and build code with Sonnet. The Claude app itself got a couple enhancements as well with this release: the ability to analyze data, create files, and visualize various different insights from the data that you provide to it. There's also the ability within the Claude API to, again, focused on agents, but this will be, again, zeroed in on long-running tasks, and the ability, and this is one, by the way, that I'm about to say, that has always been a thorn in the use of the Claude models. It's hitting those context limits, or especially if you're running through the UI. So they've done things inside of the API for long-running agents without having to hit the context limits within that. So that's super important. The other thing too is in this, they're releasing a research preview called Imagine with Claude. Again, still experimental, but this generates software on the fly. So no code is pre-written, and this is, again, something Imagine will be able to build your pieces with you. So Claude 4.5 Sonnet is available everywhere so far. It's available on the developer platform. Obviously, it's natively within Amazon Bedrock and Google's Cloud Vertex AI. One little kind of side note, not necessarily directly related to 4.5, is that Microsoft has been starting to slowly release tools that are based upon the Claude models. So this is showing up already within the researcher agent. And if you kind of remember, maybe about a half hour ago, when I was mentioning some things with the new Microsoft premium M365 subscription for end users, that agent, or the things that run in the Office agent mode, are actually using Claude Sonnet. So we're starting to see even the Claude models, because of its advantage of reasoning and code building, start to use within some of the Microsoft platform tools. So anyway, that's a quick synopsis of the Claude Sonnet 4.5 release.
Good update, Jamie. Claude Sonnet 4.5 definitely is exciting, particularly when it comes to the coding space. Okay, let's talk about the new launch. Essentially, it's a new feature that ChatGPT has launched, which is instant checkout in ChatGPT. So now you don't have to go to the browser to go to the shopping website and search, etc. If you are very comfortable using ChatGPT, you put a query. For example, let's say you want to search for a tennis shoes, and then it will try to find the most relevant um, option available from the compatible merchants. And then within the ChatGPT, you can actually now just simply click buy and then make the purchase. That's it. You don't have to go outside it. You don't have to do all those things. You find result and you do it. Now, basically, it the way it works is that it allows you to search anything that you want, and then it goes out to the compatible merchant, for example, Etsy. And Etsy has already started doing this, so you can already find lots of materials from Etsy. Shopify is the next one. They are already working to build and integrate the Shopify merchants as well. And then you can basically, just simply make the purchase. Now, this is a new kind of a channel that is being created for shopping. So I'm sure that lots of merchants would like to opt in and get on this bandwagon. This definitely brings threat to Amazon or even Google, right? I mean, the Google gets into a lot of these search business about searching and looking for the product. In fact, they have a feature in the search engine, right, for the shopping. So this is a real direct threat to the Google business model as well. And ChatGPT, what they've done is, while as they develop this as a feature, they've in parallel also worked with Stripe, which is basically payment process provider, and worked with them to create an open source and agentic commerce protocol. Call it ACP. They don't use that abbreviation much really, but it's basically agentic commerce protocol, and it's available for anybody to integrate the payment providers and their interfaces with the agents, right? So it's Stripe is one of the option, but you can always have any other payment processor also integrated using this protocol. So they're betting on this goes viral just like the MCP did. Now, instant checkout is basically already is rolling out to the US ChatGPT Pro Plus and free logged-in users from the US Etsy sellers, and then other Shopify merchants as well coming soon. Which is basically Shopify has a large catalog of 1 million merchants in their portfolio, so that would be enabled too. So I think it's a good step. Jamie, I don't know if you use that a lot right now to do the research. I've started doing some of the research in the ChatGPT now, and I think it would be a good experience to just simply one click and buy it. Now, one quick thing. Now, you may wonder that, okay, how do they then find out? Because this generally gives you one choice um, for whatever you're searching for. They are claiming that there is no sponsorship. It's not ad based. So it's not that you can just simply sponsor and buy that, okay, whoever searches for shoe, just show my link. It is totally based on the relevance and based on the compatibility of the provider and the ratings and all those kind of things, but it is not a sponsored result. Okay, so that's what is the key thing, because I think if it is a sponsored result, I would be skeptic, right? I would not really trust that single choice. But if they claim and if they truly show the neutral results based on purely my interest, then I think it's a good step forward.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that. So, if you remember the last episode where I started to demo some of the new desktop machine that I have that's focused on GPU and being able to use it for AI, I used ChatGPT to do some of that research on what machine to use. Now, this feature would have been great if it was in there, but like you, I agree. If it's, hey, here's a sponsored link, and that's the only thing you're going to get for instant checkout, I am not in favor of that. I would want something similar to like an Amazon experience where, yeah, you might get some of the sponsored pieces, but you do have a choice of looking at the various different offers or different companies. I would assume they're going to do that. But yeah, I would definitely welcome that if I'm already in ChatGPT doing my research. It just makes natural sense to take that next step in that buying process to have the ability to check out directly from there.
True. I think it's definitely a new experience to try that out. By the way, in ChatGPT, they also rolled out some other features, Jamie. There are things, for example, parental controls. So there are now new teen safety features which let parents link accounts, set limits, dial down sensitive content, and the control also let parents customize their teen's experience by setting quiet hours and or turning off the voice mode or memory, or removing the image generation, opting out of model training. I think that's really, really needed. I use, for example, screen time on the Apple platform, right, the iOS platform, to actually govern with my teenagers, and I would definitely want similar kind of flexibility in the ChatGPT as well, because I have extended that access to my kids as well. So I think this is really good, important, because remember there have been some news about like some of the models not able to prevent, unfortunately, some of these suicide that kids have done. So I think this kind of helped them. So what they've done is, by providing these features, teen accounts will get a lot of these content protection, like reduced graphic content, beauty ideals, and a detection system that recognizes potential signs that a teen might be thinking about self-harm. And it acknowledges that the system won't be perfect, but it raises alarms. It can raise alarms when there isn't real danger. So there could be false positive. However, they say that, but we think it's better to act and alert a parent so that they can step in than to stay silent. And OpenAI also say that it is also working on ways to reach law enforcement or emergency services if it detects an imminent threat to life and cannot reach a parent. So I think it's going to get, and given that we have seen lots of these news with different providers where kids have done the self-harm, I think it's a welcome step. Enjoy the rest of the weekend and have a listen, share, subscribe, and comment. Okay. Bye, Jimmy. Bye, everyone.
See ya. Bye-bye.